To have absolutely. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a second. Yeah, it's really great to welcome you all in person and also those of you online. So apologies if you can mostly see the top of my head online, but hopefully you'll be able to see the slides, and that's the main thing. Sorry, let me try and move my slides. Okay. We've got Hannah, who's an interpreter, who's joining us for people who use British Sign Language, which is great. And my name's Professor Katherine Woolf, and I'm from UCL Medical School. And as I say, I'm really happy to welcome you here today to this NIHR Academy Insight Day. The event is funded by the NIHR, and it's hosted by an NIHR Academy member, which is me. So the NIHR kindly gave us some funding for this to run it, but the information presented is that of the organisers, which is us and the speakers today, and not necessarily those of the NIHR or the Department of Health and Social Care. The event is hosted by UCL Medical School, and we're supported by the NIHR Incubator for Clinical Education Research. So I thought, welcome. I thought I would give you a bit of introduction to myself, because actually I had the idea for this session really reflecting on my own experience. So I'm, as I said, I'm a professor of medical education research at UCL Medical School. I'm non-clinical, so I've worked in medicine for 21 years, but actually I started off with a BSc in psychology, and then I did my PhD in psychology and medical education combined. Now, my area of research is on inequalities, primarily in education, particularly education of doctors and other healthcare professionals, and more recently looking at health inequalities within the healthcare workforce as well. And the reason I do that is to try and improve fairness and equity. So yeah, I've held 2 NIHR personal awards, the main one being a career development fellowship, which I'll talk about in a second in the next session, and also a Development Skills Enhancement Award, which paid my salary for a year while I'm on secondment to the UK Parliament with the House of Commons Health and Social Care Select Committee. So that on the right is my daughter when she came to visit me when I was in Parliament, although I've blanked out her face for privacy reasons. Okay, so a bit of housekeeping for those of you who are here in person. The toilets are basically, you come out of here and you go straight up. The men's and accessible is on the left and the women's is on the right. There is no fire alarm scheduled. So if there's an alarm, it's a real one, we have to leave. We leave essentially the way that we came in. And then when we get outside, we go left through the arch, and that's where we meet. Now, all of these sessions are being hosted on Zoom as well as in person. As you heard earlier, they're being recorded. And the idea is that they'll be uploaded to the NIHR Academy YouTube channel so that other people will be able to watch them back later if they couldn't attend in person. And we did have quite a lot of people who couldn't attend in person and did want to watch them afterwards. So to try and make this event as accessible and inclusive as possible, we do have an interpreter, although I'm not quite sure what's happened to her. Oh, because it's Drew. Okay, so Emma's going to sort that out for us. Sorry, we've got 2 interpreters because it's quite, there he is. There's Drew. Brilliant. Hi, Drew. So yeah, so what we're asking is that if we can keep the noise in the room to a minimum, that just helps with the recording of the sound, and it also helps with the interpreters as well. We also have palantypists who are providing high quality subtitling and captioning for what we're saying. So what that means is that questions are going to come through Slido rather than you putting your hand up in the room. And that's also to enable equitable participation between those in the room and those online. And also because there's some quite interesting research which you may be aware of about who it is who asks questions in seminars and who doesn't. So hopefully to try and overcome some of those barriers. we're doing it online via Slido. Oh, and if you haven't used Slido before, you're going to be an expert by the end of the day, because we're going to be using it a lot. Okay, so the aims of today's event are to increase successful applications to the NIHR Academy for fellowships, and specifically fellowships within education. So, and that's sometimes called clinical education, or sometimes called healthcare professions education. So the education and training of people working in healthcare. And there are some professional groups that are underrepresented in terms of who gets a fellowship. And so that's non-clinical researchers like me, but also clinical researchers, but those who are not doctors or not dentists as well. So we've really tried to encourage people from those groups to come along and access this information. So we want to increase applicants' knowledge, increase skills, and increase opportunities as well for you to kind of get to know some people who might be able to help you in your application, or who might be able to help you with your actual fellowship if you're successful and get one. We also want to identify barriers to people applying, so that we can think of ways to overcome them, and also obviously feed that back to NIHR so they can think how they can overcome some of these barriers. Okay, so we've put together a program that includes kind of personal journeys and tips from people who hold or who have held fellowships. So we have Bakita, who's held a pre-doctoral and currently holds a doctoral fellowship. We have me and Paul Tiffin, who've held post-doctoral fellowships. We have two breakout options. So one is qualitative, for people who kind of do more qualitative research. One is more quantitative, which is about the UK medical education database, for people who want to find out more about that. We've got Ryan here, who knows probably more about what the NIHR Academy offers than anybody else. So he's going to tell us about that. We've got Gillian from the incubator, who's here to tell you about what support they can offer, and they've got various sessions that they're running to help people with fellowships as well. We've got Johanna, who's coming from the House of Commons to talk about policy engagement. We've got Cecily and Sophie to come and talk to you about public and patient involvement, which is obviously really key part of doing research for NIHR. And then at the end, we're going to address as many as we possibly can, barriers to applying, with a little Q&A session at the end. But as I said, everything that you tell us about those barriers, we're going to put together and we're going to feed back to NIHR. So even if we can't answer all of them, or you don't get all of your answers during the day, hopefully they'll be fed back in. But also you might meet somebody who then you can ask about later, ask for their support. So for those of you who are here in the room, we've got an in-person networking lunch where we've got colleagues from the General Medical Council, the Healthcare Professions Council, and the Nursing and Midwifery Council as well. So you can, if you're interested in doing research in any of those areas that they cover, you can have a chat with them and see what kind of research they want and they're interested in, and how they might be able to help you. Okay, so many of you, we got over 100 responses to our pre-event questionnaire about barriers. These are some of the themes that I just read through them, and I picked out some of these themes. I'm not going to go through them here now. You can just have a quick look at them. But yeah, as I say, please do go to Slido, go to the Q&A tab, not the polls tab. And type, when it says ask a question, you can just type in anything that you want, or I believe you can upvote as well, so you can kind of promote ones that you agree with if you want, and just carry on doing that throughout the day. Okay, on your delegate handbook as well, which I think has been emailed to you, there's the link to this Slido too. Okay. So we're going to seamlessly move into the first session. Yes. Oh, thank you. Right, so remember I said you were going to be an expert in Slido, and that's because this is a different Slido to ask me questions, which I will answer at the end of this session. Okay. So you should be able to open it on a new tab. Thanks, Emma. Okay, so you may recognize this place. This is the Welcome, just around the corner. And in 2016, I went there for an NIHR How to Get a Fellowship Day. And I left crying because I thought, I literally actually burst into tears. I thought, I'm never going to get a fellowship. You know, it's just like this, the day is over, you know, my career is over for me. What's the point, kind of thing. But obviously, here I am. And I did get one. So how did I get from feeling really awful to actually successfully applying just a few months later? And, you know, what can I share about that experience, I suppose, with you is what I wanted to do today. Now, I'm sharing my personal journey. I have many advantages that essentially I've just got through accident of birth. And, you know, maybe I have some disadvantages too as well. But essentially, I just wanted to share my story in the hope that some of it might resonate with you, that it might provide some encouragement for you. But I realized that, you know, my experience isn't going to be everybody's. And, you know, I am dedicated to kind of helping to shine a light on inequities that I may not have experienced personally, so that we can try and address them. And that's part of the aim of today's event as well. Now, I'm sort of thinking, what can I really tell them that's going to be useful? And I thought these are really the two take-home messages from my talk. This is what I needed to be told when I came out of that welcome session, which was applying for an NIHR is worth it. It's a lot of work. I found applying, the application process was a lot of work. But when I got one, it completely transformed my career. So it really was worth it. It was worth the work. Now, you might think, well, I'm not going to get one. They're really competitive. But if you don't apply, then you definitely won't get one. Whereas if you do apply, then you might. And there is actually a lot of help and support and guidance available. So it really is worth exploring seriously. Now, in terms of my NIHR kind of experience, as I said, I got CDF, which is now, I think, an advanced fellowship. And I got it 7 years, sorry, it's just cut off there, but 7 years after I got my PhD, which at the time was right at the limit of the cutoff for when you could apply. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I actually got it in 2017, but it started in January 2018. I'd previously got a bit of money to help me involve patients in writing my application process. And then after I got that fellowship, I became essentially co-investigator or co-chief investigator on some other NIHR grants. And like I said, I got a Development Skills Enhancement Award. And then just recently, I got this little pot of money to put on the event today as well. So I got that through NIHR as well. Thanks to Ryan for helping with that. So my CDF was brilliant because essentially it gave me 3 years of funding. So it bought out my time 100% for 3 years, plus 3 years of a postdoc. It paid all of my research costs. It paid my participant payments, my PPI costs, open access publications. It also paid for a load of development and training, conferences, an overseas research placement I wasn't able to do because of COVID, but they would have paid for it, and lots of expensive training courses. And then I became part of the NIHR Academy, which opened up lots of other training opportunities for me as well. And it kind of gave me a bit of a stamp of quality within the academic community as well. So it is really worth, that's why it transformed my career. Okay, so you might look at this and think, gosh, she looks really successful. So why is it then that I was crying when I came out and thought, this is the end of my career, I'm never going to be able to do it? And it's because I've had a load of failures as well. And I put failures because it's maybe not very helpful to think of them in that way, but that is how I often thought of them. So this is me, you know, up to when I applied in 2017. I'd also had successes, by the way, but these are some of the things that I hadn't been successful in. My A-levels, I kind of didn't really turn up for them, essentially, really. So I didn't really do very well in there. I was supposed to go to Manchester to do biomedical sciences, and I just didn't go. Instead, I took time out, I worked. I did do an art foundation that I also didn't really turn up for. I managed to scrape a pass. Presumably they didn't fail anyone, I don't know. And then I did decide, right, okay, I'm going to go to university and I love psychology. This is what I want to do. So I applied to 5 places and I got rejected from 4 of them, but Goldsmiths let me in. Thank you, Goldsmiths. Then I loved my degree, got my degree, applied for research jobs and didn't get any of them, essentially. But somebody said, oh, we do have a job in the medical school. Do you want to come and interview for this? And I got that job. Amazing. So then I was in the medical school. I did my PhD there, got supported. That was great. Then I needed to get a lecturer's job, and I failed to even get shortlisted for at least one in Warwick that stands out, but I think quite a few others. I did get one at UCL, so that was okay. And then really the thing that was the kind of nail in the coffin for me in terms of my ambition was not getting an ESRC Future Leaders Fellowship. So I got shortlisted and I got one of the top marks, if not the top mark in shortlisting. And then I got one of the bottom marks in the actual full application. I didn't get it. And I really was like, that's it for me. I can't be. It was such a lot of work applying. Thought I can't do this. You know, this isn't for me. Oh, I did also not get a job at King's at some point as well. But, you know, for a long time, for about 5 years, I basically didn't apply for anything that was really competitive like that. I got different sorts of grants. I got other pots of money, but nothing really big. Also, kind of in that period, 2 non-work priorities arrived. So I had twins, and I was on mat leave and then part-time for a bit. They're 10 and a half now, currently vomiting at home. So poor things, I know. Hopefully they're all right now. So I really kind of felt like I had this ginormous mountain to climb. I was never going to be able to achieve it, but I did. And the reason I did is basically because I got help. Now, I can't get you to do this interactively on a Slido, so you're going to have to think your answer and not communicate it to me. But after I got my application, I emailed a lot of people and I made a list and I just counted how many it was. So do you think it was 5 people, 12 people, 22 people, or 39 people? And the answer is, of course, 39. Now, this includes patients, people from across 7 different universities, 4 policy organisations, the NIHR Academy themselves, NIHR Research Support Service. Some of these people I knew well, and they helped me because they knew me already. Many of them I kind of had met once or twice, didn't really know them. And some I approached cold, including a person who ended up being my mentor. I just literally emailed her and said, you look like someone who might be able to help me. Can you help me? And she said, yeah, of course, and gave me loads of help. And the sort of help I got was refining my research ideas, getting funding for involving patients in my application. I had no idea you could do that. And someone at UCL just told me and helped me with that. Agreeing to mentor me, agreeing to host me on placements, helping me cost my application, helping me when I got prepared for interview. And I got kind of emotional help. So I got that feeling of, yes, do actually spend the time doing this. Put your other stuff aside. You know, prioritize this. It's worth it. It's hard to kind of prioritize stuff, I think, when you think you might not get it and it's really competitive. They showed faith in me. They helped me believe that, yeah, I really could do it. And as I said, I got some of this help from people I'd never met before, as well as from some people that I didn't know well. So these are my 2 take-home messages. It's worth it, even though it's a lot of work. You might get it if you try. Okay, so I'm looking forward to hearing your questions. Okay. So I need some help now to find your questions. Emma, are you able to look at the questions? Of course, thank you.
So these are the
These are
barriers.
for the other ones.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So these are all the barriers. So if anyone does have any questions now for Kath, then please scan the QR and put your questions in.
It's funny not having anyone saying it in person, isn't it? Okay. So somebody said, can you identify anything in particular that contributed to the failures? And how did you find the motivation to keep going? So, I mean, I think everyone just has failures in their career, don't they? At least I assume they do. Makes me feel a bit less embarrassed sharing mine to think that everybody has things like this. And in fact, Catherine Sleeman gave a talk at that welcome event where she talked about the ups and downs of her careers as well, which is kind of one of the things that helped me think about that. And how do I keep the motivation going? Well, I mean, I found it hard, but I just had to have people around me who said to me, you know, well, keep going. And then I just had to make a decision basically and think, well, am I going to go for this or not? And I didn't go for it for 5 years, and then I did. So, you know, and I was lucky. How long did it take to prepare your application? Yeah, so I went to that event in September. The deadline was a classic funder deadline of like immediately after the Christmas holidays. So I tried to get it done by, I think it was the 16th of December, was to try and get it all done by then so that I didn't have to work on Christmas. So actually that was pretty speedy, but I did it pretty much full time for those 3 months. How to overcome the fact that many institutions take weeks and weeks to get back at you for finances, PPI, etc., when you have 5-week deadline to apply. Yeah, well, I mean, this is it. Ideally, you need to apply as soon as it opens, which normally is a few months. It's normally a bit longer than 5 weeks. But so you need to keep your eye on when opportunities open. And build in that time. So, you know, let the university know that you're planning to apply. That's another motivating factor. Tell people you're going to apply, so that they can plan that time in as well. How did you approach who to approach as a mentor? How did you decide who to approach as a mentor? And how do you manage conflicting advice from mentors? So I decided so one had been my PhD supervisor, so that was easy. But the other one was Jane Parry, and I literally just looked at her profile and I thought she publishes in the area that I'm interested in. She's a big name. It transpired that also she sat on some some of the committees that award fellowships, although obviously she couldn't judge mine because she would have had a conflict of interest. So that meant she really knew what they were looking for. And how do you manage conflicting advice from mentors? Yeah, I mean, that's the same at any stage in your academic career, isn't it? Like your PhD supervisors are always telling you different things, and you just have to try and make up your own mind and think what suits you best. And of course, you can always ask, you can have more than 2 mentors. You can have lots of people who you trust and ask their advice. Ask patients. Okay, how are we doing for time? You've got enough time still? Great. What if you're later in your career? Are there half NIHR fellowships or equivalents, please? So that is something that I think is probably a better question for Ryan to answer, which you could answer probably in the next session. Or do you want to answer it now? Are there kind of, what if you're later on in your career? Oh.
Basically, yes, I think you can enter the career path. We have the structure, so it's right from pre-doctoral through to professorship, but there's certainly no requirement to start at the beginning of the fellowship journey. You can jump in at any point. So yeah, certainly, as long as you're meeting all the assessment criteria, you know, and the assessors wouldn't necessarily have any detail about any kind of information. So yeah, and then yeah, we have tried to make all our fellowships as flexible as possible in terms of time commitment. So yeah, hopefully I'll cover it a bit more in my presentation, and but basically yes.
Fab, thank you. Okay, so any tips on how to sort a supervisor for a PhD? I mean, it's hard, but lots of people approach me and say, will you supervise my PhD? And often one of the things that I'm thinking about is the practicalities of it, which is, how are you going to get funding for this? How are you actually going to do it? And so if you say, I'm going to apply for a doctoral fellowship, you know, and this is my plan. If you look like you've kind of really actually thought about it quite carefully, and you've got a plan, then I would say just go to whoever you think does the best research. And also you could maybe, if you know a few people who work in that area already, you could see who's kind of got a reputation for being nice as well, I would say. Is it ever too early to consider completing an NIHR fellowship application? For instance, if you're a first-year medical student. So I would say it's never too early to consider, to start thinking about it. Obviously, there are things that you need to work out what you're going to be eligible for. And as I say, Ryan's going to talk more about that in a moment, and where you get that information. The other thing is that the eligibility criteria do change. So, you know, so don't get too fixed. Don't think, well, I looked up the criteria, so I know what they are, and I can apply for that in 5 years, because the criteria might well have changed by then. So, but yeah, I would say generally think about your research project, think about the training and development that you need to enable you to do that research well. Think about, you know, find out what patients think about this, about or you know, the people who are going to benefit from your research. You know, what are their views on it? Yeah, I would say it's not too early to think about that. It's a good idea. Okay, with children, possibly job and time needed to make the fellowship application is a barrier. How did you prioritize and have confidence to put other things aside and focus? Yeah, do you know, it's funny. It's one of those things where you sort of look back and you think, what happened? And I think I just got sick of not doing it, potentially. So, and I had the person who had supervised my PhD and was my mentor, Chris McManus, who pushed me, I guess, and said, yeah, you know, you can do this, and showed faith in me. But I think it's just kind of a switch turned, and I just thought, yeah, I'm going to go for it now. Okay, I think that's probably us out of time. So I will move to our next speaker.